Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Before we start, I have a few housekeeping announcements to make. Please keep your mobile phones on a silence mode so that there is no disturbance during the sessions. For your information, the question slips are kept in your kits. You may write down your questions and can hand over these slips towards the end of the session to the volunteers present in the hall. On behalf of Ministry of Human Resource and Development, National Board of Accreditation and UKIERI, I welcome you to this two-day national workshop on quality assurance and accreditation. Now may I request you to please join me in welcoming the dignitaries on the dais. Shri Ashok Thakur, Secretary Higher Education, Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India. Mr. Rob Lyons, Director India, British Council. Shri Pawan Agarwal, Advisor Education, Planning Commission, Government of India, and Dr. Dinesh K. Paliwal, Member Secretary, National Board of Accreditation. Please give a big round of applause to them. I give a brief introduction of the dignitaries on the dais and the session chair. Shri Ashok Thakur, Secretary, Higher Education, Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India, took over as Secretary on 25th of May 2012 and is overall in charge of the department in India. He joined the Indian Administrative Services in 1977 and since then held several posts including Principal Secretary, Tourism, Culture, Youth Services and Sports, Forest, Industries, Town and Country Planning and Home in the State Government of Himachal Pradesh. At the center, he worked in the Ministry of Rural Development in the rank of Joint Secretary. He also served in Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration, Mussoorie, as an instructor. In May 2008, he joined the Department of Higher Education, Ministry of Human Resource Development, in charge of technical education. We welcome you, sir. Shri Pawan Agarwal is currently Advisor Education Planning Commission. He has earlier served as Director in the Ministry of Human Resource Development, as well as Financial Advisor and Coordinator of New Initiatives of the University Grant Commission, a position in which he developed sustainable experience in higher education policy and practices and gained a broad understanding of the issues and challenges faced by India's universities and colleges. He has also held important positions in the West Bengal government as Principal Secretary, Cooperation Department, Secretary Science and Technology, and Municipal Affairs Departments. Welcome to the session, sir. Mr. Rob Lyons took up the post of Director India for British Council in January 2011. His previous posts include Deputy Director Global Operations and Regional Director for the Middle East. He has been with the British Council since 1994 and has also worked in Poland and Saudi Arabia. Rob holds an MA in Applied Linguistics. Before joining the British Council, Rob worked as a linguist for a number of years in Britain and was director of a large language institute in Hungary. Welcome, Rob. Dr. D.K. Paliwal, Member Secretary, National Board of Accreditation. He obtained his doctorate degree from Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. Dr. Paliwal has many research papers and articles to his credit. He joined Government of India as Assistant Educational Advisor in 1992 and rendered his services on this position till 1997 before switching over to a diplomatic assignment as Consul in Consulate General of India, New York. He was elevated to the post of Deputy Educational Advisor in the Ministry of Human Resource Development in 2002. He held the additional charge of the post of Member Secretary AICTE during August 2009 to October 2010. At present, he is serving as Member Secretary, NBA. A very impressive speaker, Dr. Paliwal has been chair and speaker at many national and international forums and conferences. Welcome to the session, sir. Now I'd request Rob to kindly present a bouquet of flowers to Shri Ashok Thakur. Please join him in welcoming Professor Ashok Thakur, please. We request Dr. Paliwal to present a bouquet of flowers to Mr. Agrawal. Thank you, sir. Now I'll request all the dignitaries on the dais to kindly light the lamp and inaugurate the two-day workshop, please. Astu ma sadgamya, tamso ma jyotirgamya, मार्त्यो माँ अमृत गम्य। असत्य से सत्य की ओर, अंधकार से प्रकाश की ओर और मृत्यु के भय से अमरत्व की ओर। Thank you, gentlemen. Now I'll request Mr. Rob Lyons, Director, India British Council, to please present his welcome address. Rob.
Distinguished panel, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the British Council and UKIERI, I would like to welcome you all here to this national workshop on accreditation and quality assurance. And I think the fact that there are so many people here on a Sunday morning demonstrates both the importance of this workshop, but also your commitment to quality in higher education. My wife thinks I was coming out to play golf this morning. She couldn't understand why I was wearing a suit, and I assured her, no, I'm coming out for a much more important cause. The quality of a country's higher education sector and its assessment and monitoring is not only key to its social and economic well-being, it is also a determining factor affecting the status of higher education at an international level. And accreditation, assessment, and regulation all contribute towards quality. I'm delighted, therefore, that all the relevant stakeholders are here today participating in this workshop. We have UGC, NAAC, AICTE, MBA, MHRD, and many other bodies and institutions. And as India moves towards implementing the UGC notification, which will make accreditation mandatory for institutes of higher education, it is critical that all stakeholders undertake and understand the existing accreditation models, both nationally and internationally. I'm therefore delighted that we have with us today Carolyn Campbell and Dr. Melinda Drowley from the UK, who represent the Quality Assurance Agency for Higher Education in the UK, and they will share with us the institutional accreditation model in the UK. So thank you very much for coming. While the UK higher education sector is modest in size, the Indian higher education system has become one of the largest in the world. And this huge expansion has brought with it greater demands for quality education with internationally acceptable standards. And I know that the workshop today will look at some of the issues that are arising from this. As many of you know, the UK India Education Research Initiative, UKIERI, has been actively working with MHRD to develop programs that meet the priorities, needs of both the UK and India, to bring about systemic change in our higher education systems in both our countries. UKIERI is supported by both the Indian and the UK governments and aims to provide a platform for sharing of best practices across key areas such as quality assurance, which we are addressing here today. And UKIERI also supports student mobility, and both countries recognise the importance of understanding each other's qualifications. If our higher education systems are part of global quality assessment assurance systems, then our students will benefit and be better prepared to study and work in a globalized world. The holistic approach towards education with a focus on quality is therefore the key. And organizations present here today play an important role in this regard. It will be through the combined effort of government and non-government organizations, councils of higher education, student bodies, academic staff, and accreditation bodies and others that we can strengthen quality provision. And I hope this workshop can start to develop a roadmap to do this through strengthening accreditation systems and also further strengthening the collaboration between our two countries. Well, therefore, thank you once again for coming, and I wish you all a very successful workshop. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob, for the warm welcome. Now I'll request Shri Ashok Thakur, Secretary, Higher Education, Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India, to kindly present the inaugural address, please.
My friend Rob, Agarwal Sahab, Paliwal Sahab, our esteemed guests from QAA, Carolyn and Melinda, officers from UGC, AICTE, NAC, vice chancellors from the various universities, and dear friends. I will just give you a brief overall view of accreditation and the way we are trying to proceed tackling quality issues of quality based on accreditation. I'll give you a brief strategy plan that we have. There are two pillars on which this entire higher education edifice rests in India. One thrust is on access, and the other thrust is on quality. Now, as far as access is concerned, we seem to be doing fairly well. About 5 years back, 6 years back, and earlier, we were not even sure about that. Recently, we had a higher education survey in our ministry, and those projections were very, very encouraging. According to that, the target of achieving GR of 30% by 2020. And when I say GR, this is the percentage of children in the age group of 18 to 23 and enrolled. We are almost touching 19-20%. Now this, and at that time, about 5 years back, we were just hovering around 13%. So the rate at which we are proceeding is fairly encouraging and I would say impressive. The total overall enrollment in higher education in the country has crossed 20 million mark, which makes us the second largest country in the world after China. China is way ahead, it is 30 million. We have apparently just overtaken US in this. So as far as the expansion is concerned, as I said, we are doing well. And partly it is because of the investments which the higher education or the government of India did in the 11th five-year plan. There was a paradigm shift in the way we look at planning our higher education. There was a 9-fold increase in funding That was one aspect, but of course, more important than that, the country was growing at a very good rate, 9%, almost hedging on 10. So that created a lot of jobs, a lot of pressure to build more institutions and cater to the industry. Having said that, the issue now is, the not so glamorous part of this is that the quality of the students who are passing out from these institutions leaves much to be desired. So our entire emphasis of the 12th five-year plan is going to be on quality. And when we talk about quality of the students that come out, the quality of the institution becomes very, very important. And therefore, quality assurance and accreditation becomes the central part of our process for reforming higher education. Our country did not have any system of making accreditation mandatory. It is not that we don't have anything. We have two bodies, government bodies, which are engaged in accreditation. One is the NAC, and the other one is NBA. But they cater to just a fraction of the, I wouldn't say fraction, but say about 30% of the institutions. The large part of it is unaccredited. Just to give a feel of the volume that we are talking about, we have more than 800 universities, 33,000 and plus growing colleges. We have 3,500 engineering colleges and almost same number of management institutions, apart from polytechnics and other institutions. So the task is gigantic and also chaotic. So the ministry and UGC and the other regulators feel that if we want to embark on this agenda of reforms in higher education, then the starting point is accreditation. Till now, though we had these bodies were firstly creation of the regulators themselves. You are the investigating agency, you are also the judge. You are the police person and you are also the judge. That didn't make much sense, and it created a lot of lack of credibility of the Indian accreditation system. So now the decision is to make all these accrediting agencies, including NAC and NBA, completely independent bodies away from the government, so that they become like third-party assessing bodies. And the person who approves it, whether it is UGC, AICTE, NCTE, these are the bodies which are separate from them. So that is the first principle on which we are working. Second, we did try to go through the legislative route first. We have a bill still pending before the Parliament, which is to create a regulatory authority, National Accreditation Regulatory Authority, in short, NARA. But that, for some reason, that bill didn't come through. It is still before the Parliament. I hope one day good sense prevails and it is cleared. But pending that, we have used UGC's own inherent powers to issue regulations. So therefore, UGC has come out with its own regulations, which is called the UGC Mandatory Accreditation and Assessment and Accreditation for Higher Education Institutions. By and large, it follows the same contours as provided in the NARA bill. So I'll just briefly tell you the structure in which this regulation works. It basically talks about creating multiple rating agencies. Today we have NAC and NBA. Maybe NAC and NBA will spawn more institutions like this. This is the first stage presently. In the second phase, we will like to go even beyond. We would not be even averse to thinking of other agencies like CRISIL be part of it. But that is in the second phase. We have also writing to the state governments to form their own accrediting agencies. At the same time, we are embarking on a policy of creating capacity amongst institutions which already exist. For example, I personally feel that sooner or later, the universities themselves should accredit the colleges under them. That's a long way to go, but still I have told you that we have more than 33,000 colleges. How can just 4, 5, or a dozen institutions cater to them? The universities, which are supposed to be responsible for quality in their own setup, should actually, in the long run, be actively engaged in creating capacity amongst themselves to accredit the colleges under which they are. Now, who will accredit the accrediting agencies? So for that, in the bill, we have the provision for this authority, NARA, but since the bill is not coming through, it is taking some time. So the original regulator, which is UGC, will be the agency which will lay down, which will shortly come out with another regulation, which will lay guidelines for accrediting agencies. So that is another thing which we are trying to do. And of course, in the present thing, there are two ways. One is called the assessment. Any new institution which will be set up after the promulgation of this regulation, is that they will apply to these accrediting agencies, and they will make an assessment, and then only after they have passed will the UGC give them permission to start. The other thing is with regard to regular assessment. There again, any institution which has completed 6 years will then have to apply for, that means 2 batches should have passed from there to make them be forced to apply for accreditation. And a grace period of 3 years is given to the other institutions. We don't want to immediately put them into any kind of difficult spot. Institutions which have not been accredited, we will give them 3 years to work towards that. Now, building on this concept of accreditation, there are a whole lot of things that can be done. These are in the realm of looking futuristically, but I feel that this is the path that we will be following, and we are constantly engaging UGC in this. Number one is that I feel there is no need, once accrediting agencies come in, there is no need for this 12B inspection which UGC conducts. These accrediting agencies itself should be sufficient. And I also feel that there should be no inspections, in fact, by any of the regulatory authority on their own. It should be these accrediting bodies which should go and do the accreditation, or any other reporting which has to be done should be done through accrediting agencies. These regulators should not engage themselves or indulge in sending teams from here, because it leads to a whole lot of not so healthy practices. In the Yashpal committee report, those of you, I think it came out in 2008, mentions about making 1,500 colleges into universities. The top colleges of our country should be, in fact, being made. But nothing much has been done. This issue is affiliated, this issue is connected with the issue of affiliation. In India, we have this system of affiliation wherein the universities exert so much of power that the colleges under them, though they may be better than the universities, there's a ceiling, glass ceiling. They cannot go beyond it. So through this accreditation system, the ministry feels that we can really liberate these colleges. So to begin with, this year I have told UGC that we should look at, I won't say liberating, but it almost tantamounts to that, about at least 100 colleges. We're working on a framework so that colleges like St. Stephen's, Loyola College, or any other good college that exists in throughout a country, why should they not be set free? And especially if they have the A accreditation from NAC or NBA. So basically the game plan is that if you are accredited, then give weightage to it and liberate them. I'm sure that once this freedom is given to them, this incentive is given to them, quality will improve automatically. And of course, we have to create similar bodies, mirror bodies for distance education, regulation of distance education, which is another complete huge area to work on. DEC was a body which was under IGNOU, which was regulating it, but that has been repealed. So this work again comes back to UGC. We have another area of looking at accreditation, and that is the area of vocational education. Huge work again there. So all these areas, whether it is distance education, vocational education, apart from the normal education, we really need to have accrediting systems to be put in place. And lastly, I would like to say that when we talk about accreditation, we cannot think about India alone. We have to think about the whole world, because the whole world is a global village. And it is because of that that today Carolyn Campbell and Melinda Drawley are here with us to have a look at the world systems in other countries. In fact, some time back when we had a little workshop, there I was introduced first to QAA, and then I was very keen that we must have a workshop on this line. And on the 22nd and 23rd of this month, we're having, thanks to Pawan Agrawal, another workshop which should again be very interesting, and I request all of you to be there, and that is about ranking of institutions. Accreditations lead to ranking. The Times Higher Education will be the knowledge partner in that. You must have read so many times in the newspaper, Parliament gets agitated, why ain't Indian universities in the top 200 universities of the world? Well, there are no shortcuts, you've got to work hard. And to begin with, accreditation is the first point from where to begin with. So therefore, accreditation is a subject which is much larger. Here again, we had made a beginning by putting a bill before the Parliament for Foreign Education Providers Bill, because unless you have competition, unless you keep your windows and doors open, no fresh ideas will come, there will be no competition. We very well remember when the days of ambassador cars, until Maruti and Suzuki came in, the quality of the cars in the countries was so very archaic. Similarly, I feel that unless we keep our doors and windows open, let foreign models come in, and then you will see automatically the reforms in the country and the quality improving. Lastly, I will say that I'll end with an optimistic note. I am sure that Just like in the 1990s, we ushered in the economic reforms, this decade, starting 2010, will be the decade of reforms in higher education. And in that, primarily, we have to set free our good institutions, those institutions which are accredited from the ministry, from the regulators, and from the university, so that they enjoy the same status, same facilities like any others. So the only criteria being that they should be all accredited under the highest ranking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shri Thakur, for a wonderful address and setting the context for the workshop. Now, may I request Shri Pawan Agarwal, Advisor Education Planning Commission, Government of India, to kindly present his special address.
Respected Secretary Higher Education, Mr. Ashok Thakur, Rob, friend Dinesh Paliwal, ladies and gentlemen, very good morning to all of you this Sunday morning. I think this workshop is extremely timely because we have just begun with our 12th five-year plan, and as Secretary Higher Education has just mentioned, that quality is the central concern as we move forward in higher education. And accreditation is an important tool in addressing quality issues. So it is extremely timely, and I congratulate the National Board of Accreditation to have this workshop and also to learn from what is happening in the rest of the world, and in this conference, in this event, particularly from the UK experience. I will just refer to 5 issues and challenges that the country will face as we move forward in accreditation. The Secretary Higher Education has laid before us beautifully the thinking of the government in terms of accreditation, and what changes are going to be there in policy and regulatory structure for higher education in the context of higher education. We basically will use this opportunity to strategize and see how do we take those policies forward towards implementation and look at them in the international context. So when we look at accreditation in international context, and particularly referring to our friends from UK, I think we need to be very clear that what is the context of Indian higher education and how it is different from the UK higher education. I think it will help all of us, and in particular our guests, to make some comments on how do we move forward. First is, I think, as Secretary Higher Education mentioned, that India is a very large system. It is a large and fragmented system. 800 universities, 35,500 colleges, and I knew there were 700 universities, but I'll not be surprised if they have become 800. This is the kind of rapidity with which we are, growing. In fact, every single day over the past 5 years, 8 to 10 new institutions were being established in this country. That has been the rapidity of the growth of Indian sector. Obviously, our institutions of higher education are small, tiny institutions with a few hundred students in most cases, when we are talking of colleges and institutions that are diploma awarding. So it makes the Indian higher education extremely fragmented as well. So the challenge of accreditation, therefore, is many, many-fold. And I believe in UK, I think you'll have to scratch your heads when was the last institution established. I think UK is a matured system. And it's, I think, to that extent, our system is still evolving and growing. Second is that India has a large private sector. The challenges of quality in private sector are very different from public institutions. And one has to take that into consideration, because if it is publicly funded, funding itself can be used as a tool to enhance quality in some ways by tying funding with accreditation. But that linkage breaks down if funding for private institutions is not very significant or is not there at all. And 60% of Indian higher education is not funded by the government, central or states. So that is the second part of, so these two distinctions between Indian higher education and the British higher education makes accreditation far more challenging than what we have in the UK. And our system of higher education could be in some ways considered closer to what's happening in the US in terms of number of institutions, some 4,000 to 5,000 institutions, and accreditation playing a very central role. And it is US is also a public and private mix, system. Of course, their private share is about 20%, and 80% of the US higher education is public institution. And there, again, the system is a matured system. So it is not a growing system. A growing system will obviously have the growing pains, and one of the pains, obviously, is the pain of staffing. You will obviously not be able to provide qualified teaching staff for a growing system because your postgraduate and research system is not expanding as rapidly, or there is a time lag in creating capacities in that. Now, coming to the 5 issues and concerns and challenges that we might face as we move forward, first is the capacity issue itself. And just to give you some numbers, 175 universities out of 700/800, around 1/4 of our universities are accredited. 5,100 colleges are accredited, that is 15%, and universities 1/4, 25%. And second and third round of accreditation is much lesser than that. In NBA programs, I think Mr. Dinesh Paliwal tells me there are 100,000 programs, and about 5,000 of them are accredited. Of course, all of them are not ripe for accreditation, and according to him, around 25,000 of them are ripe for accreditation. It means that, again, about 1/4 of our programs are accredited as far as technical programs are concerned, which come within the purview of National Board of Accreditation. And moving forward, last year, NAC had accredited 16 universities and some 576 colleges, and NAC and NBA had accredited 1,000 programs. So on a business as usual approach, NAC would take maybe 100 years and to accredit all the programs, and NAC will take 75 years. So obviously, we need many more accreditation agencies than what we currently have, or we have to scale up the capacities of our existing, accreditation bodies that we have. And I think, so this is a wonderful idea that we already have about 170 universities that between themselves accredit some 35,500 colleges. And if in some ways they can also provide a quality oversight over the colleges under their control, I think we'll be able to work on quality assurance much faster. Of course, the issues of affiliating guidelines and 2F and 12B guidelines that UGC has will have to be re-looked at in terms of the role of these affiliating universities vis-a-vis colleges. So I think we need, there is absolutely no doubt about the fact that business as usual approach will not do. Even, that significant increase in capacities maybe of NBA or NAC 5 times, 10 times is hardly useful. And more important than that is the number of assessors that you would require for these exercises. Those people who would undertake these peer reviews, the numbers will be mind-boggling. And it will not be a matter of merely competence of these assessors. I think the whole issue of how do we get people with very high integrity. If we do not select assessors with care, and if the whole process of accreditation gets compromised, I think instead of doing any good, it will do more harm to the system. So we have to be extremely careful and thoughtful while we are trying to address the issue of scale and capacities of our accreditation bodies as we move forward towards mandatory accreditation. A second is the compliance issue. And this is based on international experience. Some work has been done by Zamil Salmi from the World Bank on looking at accreditation systems worldwide. And what the evidence he has gathered around the world is that it is most successful when positive incentives are linked to accreditation rather than punitive measures. So this is again a challenge that while we are making accreditation mandatory, unless we link them with positive incentives, people will find a way around getting the institutions or programs accredited, and which may not be very helpful to avoid punishments, penalties. So how do we link incentives, positive incentives with accreditation is a challenge. A few thoughts, of course, US accreditation, and which to me, with due regards to our colleagues from QA, Indian accreditation system, I would feel is more akin to what is happening in the UK system, or in the US system. US accreditation is voluntary, and its high compliance is because the accreditation is linked to some $227 billion budget for federal student aid. That is what makes US accreditation so powerful, that despite it being voluntary, it is almost like mandatory. It is almost like mandatory, and most institutions which exist have to do it. Now, in India, unfortunately, the UGC funding extends only to 7,800 of our institutions or colleges, and some 250 universities. So, which would mean that a bulk of our universities and colleges, we cannot link UGC funding to accreditation and create positive incentives. Obviously, we can do that by linking state funding with accreditation. We have to take the state governments on board with us, that they have to link funding of states with accreditation. We are going to have this Rashtriya Uchchatar Shiksha Abhiyan, wherein the funding can again be linked to accreditation. But more importantly, a lot of institutions will enroll students who will take education loans or will want to get scholarships which are available through different ministries and agencies. And linking those scholarships which are coming either from the state government or the central governments, or even education loans which is guaranteed by the government, may ensure some positive incentives for our universities and colleges to go in for accreditation. I think a little more thought is required on creating positive incentives for accreditation, as we move forward. Third is the value issue. What is the value in accreditation? The best value in accreditation is perhaps to the institutions themselves, that they use this as a constructive feedback to improve their own, the way they teach, the way they engage with the students, and the way they do research. And in that extent, to that extent, I'm not too sure how the current accreditation, reports are structured and how they are basically taken by the institutions. Because I have one personal experience of one institution where that institution got, I think cutoff was 65% NBA accreditation. I'll not name the institution. They got 62%. And there was a lot of discussion in the board that we should appeal against this. We've just failed by 3%. So we asked them to, look at the, to appeal against it, and so that we can get those 3% more marks and get accreditation status. But they're not looking at it, whether it is 62% or 65%, it is bad. It is below the threshold which is required. And this should be used as an opportunity to improve and find out that on what attributes, they are falling behind, whether it is student engagement or research capacity, or, so what is that attribute on which they are falling behind, and how they can work towards its improvement. I think a lot of capacity building is required, at the institutional level, to use these accreditation reports meaningfully, so that this exercise itself helps in improvement of the quality of higher education. The fourth issue is disclosure issue. And this is something which can easily be done because, as I mentioned, that 60% of our institutions of higher education are private institutions, and they're competing for students. And the students and parents are requiring information, credible information, on the basis of which they can make their decisions. That information about institutions, programs, is just not available in this country, or it is available in a very scattered and haphazard manner. I think to organize that information, because these accreditation agencies through the peer group reports, they collect a wealth of information. And merely providing their accreditation status and making it public is not good enough. I think providing a summary of those reports, that against each of those attributes, how a particular institution or program is performing, and allowing the students and parents to make use of that information, while making their selections, will go a long way in basically making, and in institutionalizing accreditation. So this was the fourth concern, and the fifth concern is about the methods. The method, I think both NBA and NAC have basically adopted the processes and the parameters, attributes. They're pretty much internationally benchmarked, except that in both cases, we are not following what is happening in the US. In the US, the accreditation is mostly done not against standards, but against the missions that the institution itself decides for itself. So, a self-report will provide the institutional mission against which the peer review committee will judge whether they are fulfilling their mission or not. And this kind of a flexibility may be all right for an established system. In India, it may not work. In case of NAC, we do have three, I believe we have a separate tool for universities, colleges, and autonomous colleges. I think we need to make it a little more diverse, maybe provide 8-10 options, a research-intensive university, a teaching-only university, and see that how, because trying to measure our institutions of higher education against a common standard or against even 3 common standards may not be desirable. We require a greater diversity of institutions, and while ultimately, I think in the spirit of what Secretary of Higher Education said, in the spirit of autonomy of institutions, we should also move towards mission-related accreditation of institutions, but that will take a lot more time. Till such time, we should have a greater diversity of, instruments for accreditation and use them for this purpose. So these are the 5 issues and challenges I feel that we'll have to address as we move towards, almost universal accreditation in higher education in the country. And, but we must also not be oblivious of the facts that some issues of quality are primarily related to infrastructure and facilities and about staffing, which in case of government institutions, the government at various levels, we are obliged to provide them. Without that, obviously, you cannot measure quality and improve it. Those have to be provided for by the government, and I think there are large shortfalls in that respect. Government funding has to be increased very significantly, and obviously, the private institutions have to be pushed into, providing all of it, which will help. Use of technology, and I believe at least NBA tells me that they're using it very intensively, but I think a more intensive use of technology will help in addressing the scale issue that we have. That is the first challenge. But at the end of the day, we are all basically seeing whether students are learning what they intend to learn. And measuring learning outcomes is the ultimate goal of any process of quality assurance. And though internationally there are, these HELO what is that assessment of higher education learning outcomes. These experiments are going on. We have to learn from that and see that can we have some exit tests wherein we can test whether a student is learning what he ought to learn. And that will be the litmus test for quality of Indian higher education. So institutional accreditation, program accreditation, they are all very, very important, but ultimately that is going to be there. And with MOOCs coming in, I think a new credentialing system that may develop around MOOCs may basically have a disruptive change in the higher education, which is institutionally organized today, and we have to be ready to face the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Shri Agrawal, for your thought-provoking address. Now may I request Dr. Dinesh K. Paliwal, Member Secretary, National Board of Accreditation, to kindly present the vote of thanks, please.
Respected Secretary Saab, Rob, Agrawal Saab, and all the ladies and gentlemen here as participants and in audience. Very, very good morning to all of you. My special thanks goes to our Secretary for his continuous encouragement and support to the cause of the quality in higher education. As ever, and with his blessings, NBA is progressing well ahead. We are also very much thankful to UKIERI for partnering with us in organizing this wonderful event. Agrawal Saab has given a well insight into the higher education system in India, vis-a-vis what is happening abroad and the challenges which are in front of us. That will allow us to give a thought that what changes we are supposed to consider to make in our accreditation system. I would like to take this opportunity, sir, to tell you most of the points which you have addressed here, NBA has already adopted and in practice. Finally, a big thanks to all the audience from the institutions, from the universities, from the professional societies, professionals, our guests from abroad, people from the missions of the foreign nations, and their educational bodies here for being here. Without them, we could not even think about the success of this event. And I have I will not mince any word by saying that NBA has ever been receiving a lot of cooperation and support from its stakeholders